My name is Josh Kuhn. I'm a professor here in the Annenberg School and the director of the Popular Music Project at the Norman Lear Center. In brief, what we do at the Popular Music Project is try to create a community around popular music that joins the USC campus with the music worlds of Los Angeles. And among the many things that we do is have special events like this that feature people like the amazing Ann Powers, who is in residence with us this year at the Popular Music Project. We did a fantastic event last fall about the state of music journalism in the age of the internet that has gotten even more intense since then.
I know.
But you can actually
on
the Popular Music Project website, you can actually see footage of that event and watch it. There's a transcript, a PDF you can read and catch up on all the things that we talked about there. In a way, this is a kind of natural extension, but kind of flipped in terms of now talking to those who are making music and finding creative ways to make music that don't necessarily color within the lines in a lot of ways. So I'm going to stop and I'm going to turn it over to Ann, and I just want to publicly thank Ann for all of her wonderful work with us at the Popular Music Project, and most importantly, having her here and the great opportunity to have Wendy and Lisa here with us tonight.
Thank you. And I have to thank Josh and Scott and Renata, wherever you are, everyone who made this event happen. And you know, Wendy and Lisa, what can I say? Well, I'll say a few things. When I was a kid, I started listening to this music by this guy named Prince, and then I noticed that there were these women playing with him, and they were incredible. And I think when I met you recently, I realized that we were about the same age, and I couldn't believe it. Not because you look older, not because you're ready, just because when I was a young person, I thought they are so accomplished and so sophisticated
and so old
and so incredible. Yeah. They could never be in their early 20s when they were making 19 when they were making incredible music with Prince, and then went on to have a prolific career of their own, making records, including a wonderful record called Girl Brothers, which was 1998,
yeah.
And also Fruit at the Bottom, and the first one was just called Wendy and Lisa. Was that just called Wendy and Lisa? They went from sort of a dance pop sound into something more kind of singer-songwritery, very personal, and now they have a fantastic new record, which we'll talk about in a minute. But in between Girl Brothers, actually even before then, they also started scoring films and television. The first film was Dangerous Minds, and they have gone on to work on many film and television projects, most famously those of us who are still watching Heroes, because we want to see what happens with Sylar and the cheerleader. We'll notice Wendy and Lisa featuring the voice of Shankar every time we watch. Also, Nurse Jackie you're working on now, and you did Crossing Jordan for many years. So I think the reason that the minute I met them, I realized I wanted to do an event with them was because, to me, Wendy and Lisa are, I should say, Wendy Melvoin and Lisa Coleman are the epitome of a successful. You are the epitome of successful working musicians. You are the model to me of how to have a long life, being creative, and getting work out there in many different formats, and following your bliss, but also finding a way to live and be and have lives, have families, be that person who's not just a shooting star, but lasts. And also because as women, you have, as people, but it's not as easy for women, for example, to become among the top tier of film and TV composers. I think that's a boys' club. You've entered into several boys' clubs over the course of your career, and helped change them into people clubs. So without further ado, I want to welcome Wendy and Lisa, and welcome all of you, and say this is a great opportunity for us to talk about, and plus they're really funny, and that's really great. But anyway, so let's start in the present day. We have a new record out. You have a new record out. I love it so much I've decided that I helped make it. It's called Wendy and Lisa. It's called White Flags of Winter Chimneys, and I want to tell you all that as part of the new strategy and model of making music and giving back so that the world gives back to you, you all get a copy of this tonight before you leave. So, I know. And the only price is to, like that old shampoo commercial, tell two friends who will tell two friends.
That is indeed correct.
After them. This record is really an interesting record on so many levels. One thing that's fascinating about it is that it is a pop record and it is a collection of songs. And yet the songs really vary in structure. And it seems like you're really challenging the shape of a pop song. And even more so than on the Girl Brothers project, which took you into new directions, working with Chad Blake and experimenting with sound. I was reading an interview with you about this record, and one of you said that your engineer even couldn't tell you. He was asking,
what are we doing?
What kind of music is this? Which I thought was an interesting and somewhat distressing question, but
It
but
was to
nonetheless.
us.
So when you came
Turn it up.
when you came to do this project, were you conscious of trying to stretch the song form to challenge what a pop song was?
Yeah.
Yeah,
talk
but
to me
probably
about
not
that.
as consciously in terms of a pop song, but just as writers for ourselves. And changing the way that we approached writing a song. A lot of times we used to just write the music first, and so we would, maybe to a fault sometimes say, okay, 4 bars intro, 8 bars thing, 8 bars this, 16 bars that, and then it would all be laid out. And we, it was great, it was fun, it was a great way to write music. But when it came time for writing the lyric and the melody, it all became pretty predictable. So in this way, we were kind of going back and forth between lyrics and then the music, and then we'd find that, oh, well, if we want to say this much in this verse, we're going to have to extend it 2 bars, or maybe we'll do a little break here, or things like that. So it really opened up the way we approached writing, and then also just challenging each other as musicians, and like, oh that sounds cool, but check this out. Like, what if I, what was that chord you played here? Well, I hear it this way, and so.
I was much more interested for the two of us on this record, very different from the last approach to our record, that we try and think outside the box. And we were absolutely going into this knowing that we weren't going to sign to a major label, that again we were going to do this on our own, that we weren't going to have the easiest time of finding new fans, that we were going to have to work very hard at that, as a different model than your typical hire the publicist and get these new people, get a video, get a look, do the whole thing. It was going to be a completely new approach. So going in and writing songs, for me, I had all of that in mind, and it really affected the way the structure was created in a song. And if Lisa and I were doing something that I thought was beautiful and breathtaking, I wanted to continue doing it instead of saying, that's not going to work, that's going to tire people out, or the record company's not going to be excited by that, or how are we going to get people to understand? It couldn't come from that place, especially after being gone for 10 years.
It was 10 years.
And becoming kind of mainly composers and working for other artists or producing for them. I think it became more important for us to become songsmiths than to become like pop artists.
Pop
Yeah, making a product and being concerned about the sellers and the buyers and what they're expecting, and the association with Prince just being completely like around you all the time, especially getting signed to a record label, and they're like, where's the funk, where's the funk, where's the funk, and which is fair question, but it's not all there is.
Well, and I mean, one thing actually, I wonder if we could just, do you have this thing loaded up?
No, you know what we do have loaded up? We have actual cues from some else.
I think it's Heroes.
We have Heroes up, but we can actually have that.
I was hoping you would play a little bit of Salt and Cherries.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Which, I mean, I love this record, and there's so many different kinds of songs on it. But for those of you who haven't heard it, I think you might be interested and surprised by this song, coming
I-
from
can
these
I-
lovely, mature
I also
ladies like
want to say
myself.
something that I've always thought was really cool, but no one seems to like say much about it, and it's not because you're not informed. It's not that. But
Hey, I have, like, 20
let's hang on a
questions.
second. When we went in to cut this record, we didn't have anyone other than the two of each other to rely on.
Right.
So
That's-
there was no other musicians for input. We had our engineer sitting in a room, just trusting that we were going to do something that made sense.
Wow.
So we played everything ourselves on this also for economic reasons as well, because it's hard to find really great musicians, and then the great ones are incredibly expensive. So
Just pick your track.
So,
we are going to pick the track now, ladies and gentlemen, and this is not a Macintosh.
I'm sorry.
Oh my God! Well, how does it work?
Track you on.
We need track.
We have to write.
We need track 4.
I just,
How did you get
although
there?
this one is in some ways a conventional
Oh, I
song
see.
structure.
Oh my.
Yeah.
This one is one of the more conventional song
Yeah,
structures.
this is the
but-
conventional track.
But I'm going to hook you in with
We have to
who
have
haven't
fun,
heard it
too.
with this one because it's awesome and should be on the radio right now.
Is it a-
It's
It's on mute.
Oh.
No, y'all muted it at the computer.
We muted up here.
Was it someone did that?
Is it the little blue
The
button?
little red thing next to the speaker, right next to the.
Well,
over here.
while we figure out that,
No. Yeah. All right, we'll go start it again. There you go.
All right, here's the song.
Sit back and enjoy.
It's really terrible.
wine.
it's never too early to dance.
They didn't have enough pizza yet.
On the table, exactly. So, as you can tell, that song is awesome. And
Thanks, guys.
And it's probably the most rockin' song on the record in some ways. It mentions the MC5, which I thought was really cool. And I want to ask you about the expression of desire in your music. There's a lot of desire expressed on this record. I think it's a very sexy record. It's a record that expresses desire, though, in many complicated ways. That song is a pretty direct, like, let's get on the table kind of song. But there are many other songs on this record that incorporate regret, longing, sort of a very adult sense of I can have what I can have and not have everything, And so I wondered about specifically how your increasing musical knowledge has allowed you to express emotions like that in different ways now that you have know so much.
Such a good question.
Thank you.
Well, the biggest change, and I think it just comes with age and being more comfortable, is being able to write sort of genderless music. And, we started our career kind of being basically homophobic to our own lives,
Interesting.
right? So I think now being adult women with children and families, that the truer we are to our music with what we say, I just think it leaves a much better legacy to what our intentions are. So I think the biggest change is our sort of comfort level in who we are now. There are so many other subsets of that, and Lisa, if you want to add to that, go for it. But I just think that that's probably the most obvious thing right now and the biggest change for us.
I was going to say, listening to I'm Free, which is another song on here that has it's an expression of love and desire for a woman very explicitly. Maybe.
Actually,
Unless it's about your
no,
kid,
that
which
was
it might
that's
be.
your read into it. No, we were
Interesting.
thinking more on that song. That's Red Bike, and that was about that's about a woman very similar to Ruth Gordon in the movie Harold and Maude. And we wanted to write a song about a young woman in a small town who sees a woman who's basically rejected as the eccentric in her own town and learns the lessons of life through this woman.
Huh.
And that's what that song is about.
Huh. Bad criticism on my part, forgive me.
No, it's really good. I
Although-
actually like that you would get that from that,
Mhm.
because it is really, it's a very loving song, and
And I guess it's desire of a different kind. Desire
is.
to become.
It's
Desire
desire to be true.
Exactly.
Right. So the title of the record comes from a Joni Mitchell song. And you have, obviously, she's a huge inspiration to all people on Earth. But, but I was curious about, is there anything specific about the sound or the structure of her albums that inspires you? Like, she also often pushes song forms, obviously, and defies genre. And you've also worked with her, and maybe you have something to share from that experience.
We love her. You're absolutely right. I think she approaches music purely from an art standpoint and not, although I guess at certain times throughout her life she did try to write pop songs, but only found herself really miserable in trying to, keep that alive or have that be the reason that she had a record deal and things like that. It wasn't really her cup of tea. And she's just such an artistic force that I think trying to put boundaries around somebody like that is doing the world an injustice. And I think for most people, for anybody who's an artist or a musician or singer or writer, whatever it is, or athlete, some guys don't just like playing baseball, They
Right.
can play football and basketball and swim really well. And, it's really hard in life to always be classified and try to restrict your love and your expression to, one venue, one avenue. And so she's always been an idol of ours for that reason. And also just because I think, your question that you asked before was about, how our writing has become more expressive and more personal. It also is a matter of being mature, but you can get that earlier in life too by just spending hours and hours with yourself. And we've gotten closer to ourselves, and we've gotten closer to how to create. Scoring has really helped me a lot because I've had to step back when I watch the screen and score a scene. I have to take in the emotion of what I'm seeing and enhance it. So it's not a direct expression of something that I just made up.
Right.
It actually, I have to find it in myself and then try to find the thing that might tie us all to that moment or that feeling. So then when you translate that or put that into a songwriting capacity, it's pretty amazing to do.
Might there be an example from the record that you'd like to show, a song that illustrates, the connection between your film and television work? And
Yes,
Sure.
that would be
What
the
would you
last
think?
track.
Sweet?
The last track, Megan.
which is called
Well-
Sweet Sweet.
It's called Sweet Sweet. We'll only play you like the first bits. It's pretty long.
It's always hard when you're sitting here and something's playing and you don't know what to do. Like, sway.
Here you go.
Thank
And so on.
So talk to us about that song.
So that, and it goes on, it's a suite, so that's the first part of it, and it is about things ending and beginning and at the same time. It is, that part of the song is literally about our relationship and just relationships with people, how sometimes you just are out of sync with each other, and you know, it's like, you know, I was thinking about what you said yesterday, and I totally agree, and then the other person will say, but you know what, I was thinking about it too, and I've actually changed my opinion about that. And we've gone through that so many times throughout. We've known each other since we were little kids, and we fell in love, we fell out of love, we've gone here, we've gone there, and there's something about us that always maintains a need
We did?
of, yeah. See what I mean? I just realized it, and now she's gone.
So in a way, that's like a very cinematic story you're telling. I mean, the story of
Yeah.
your life.
It's about our life.
I think it'd be a good movie, actually. But but I mean, how
Who
did?
would play me?
Now I'm challenged.
All right.
I know. We'll take a poll afterwards. It's like a Facebook application poll.
Right, who would play Lisa?
We should have an "Are you Wendy or Lisa" Facebook application. But that's
We're
an
going to get
aside.
to that with our women's night.
Okay, we're gonna get to that with our website. But so talk to me about how specifically the sound of that is informed by writing film or television.
Because there's no, first of all, as far as like recording it was concerned, there was no click track. Okay, so it was free form. There were 4 or 5 different pieces, and we needed to try and string them together as if they were cues from a film. So if you watch scene A, you know, Ethel wants to go and see Lucy over here, and then Lucy needs to go and, you know, buy all the milk for the mayonnaise jars or whatever the salad dressing is, right?
Right.
We need to connect
This
this,
to that.
I need to walk over here, and this
Right.
needs to make sense to this, to this, to this. So differently than a song, this one character, Ethel, needs to kind of work throughout the entire song, right?
Right. It's a
So
theme. It
Ethel
carry
needs to
through.
stop by the time she gets here. But you have to have a sense of why she got there in order to carry from here to here. I know that this is, did that make any
because
sense?
also-
Okay, so,
that part of the song that you heard was the only part that has lyrics in it
Right.
too. It just starts with that statement and then goes through this musical, you know, Ethel and the
Transformation.
mayonnaise jars actually are represented musically and not lyrically.
not lyrically,
So you just
exactly.
have to imagine, or you know,
Walking.
yeah, it's kind of up to the
Yeah,
listener
it's- yeah.
what the story is and how it ends up, and it does kind of take you through cinematic.
Well, I know, Lisa, you have done some recordings of just piano work as well, and
Yeah.
some. So how does that relate to when you come back to Wendy? Like you've done your own piano compositions.
I took the 4 pieces that she
That's
had,
how
and I
that was
said,
made.
we need to connect them and turn it into a movement. And so I sat her down and I tried to edit what she had, and I
The
told
bulk
her
of
where I
it was
thought,
kind
yeah.
of one performance. We went in for one day downstairs from where our room is, because they have a really nice piano down there. We just went in there one day and
In the studio where you
in the studio where we work, yeah. And I recorded a bunch of piano stuff, and the bulk of that was just one piece. We talked about
Yeah, but we just,
what, yeah, and then we took it in. And Wendy's a very good editor. She's for me, like, she's my producer and really good at, and when we score films, it kind of works the same way, because I sort of am an idiot savant, and I kind of just play, and then Wendy sort of says, that one, you know, do that. Yeah.
So that gets to the question of like, how do you? I wanted you to take us into the studio imaginatively. Like, how does the day start? Are you 9 to 5ers? Are you 9 p.m. to 5 a.m.ers, or
No.
like some other people you've worked with
Yes, that's over. That's done.
We're mothers now.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
We're trying to work
Yeah,
bankers hours.
you know, we try and work bankers hours. We really do, and we stay in a little tiny room and we just churn it out. It's
very brill
sim-
building kind
It
of.
is, and it's
Yeah.
very similar to working for a newspaper and having a deadline. And if you don't have that newspaper on your doorstep at 4:30 a.m.,
Right.
you lose your job.
Like I
So-
noticed, I was reading an interview, and at the end of the interview, it ends by you saying to the interviewer, "Well, we have to go write some music for Heroes now. It's due
Exactly.
tomorrow."
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. It'll
So
be
it's-
on Monday. I
So
gotta
what
do it
kind of
now.
discipline have you learned? I mean, obviously it teaches you.
I think we
discipline.
come into this with a tremendous amount of discipline. So we have a really strong work ethic.
So let's talk about the Heroes and the. I know you queued up at a certain point. Maybe you want to play a little sample from that.
Yeah, I'd love to.
And we can talk about.
Um,
You know,
I think it's here, yeah.
when you informed me something I should have realized as a good music journalist, that Shankar was in fact Shankar from Shakti.
From Shakti.
I was thrilled, because those of you who've never heard Shakti, one of the most incredible world music fusion groups ever. Ever. And the mysterious voice of Shankar that you see listed is actually the violinist.
He was the
and
violinist
vocalist
to.
for this group.
We can do this. Heroes is
That-
Heroes.
that's
Feel
something
that
that's
Silar
very
is sucking
funny.
my mind out.
It's funny when they ask you to write a main title and say, okay, cool. Well, how long does it have
Do you
to
need
be?
42 seconds long? No, we need it to be 10
10
seconds
seconds.
long.
I know,
and
this
you
is
need
what's
to
so
make
interesting,
it.
yeah.
You need to make this 10
So we'll
second.
play an E.
Exactly. But make it memorable,
Yeah,
right?
that
Make
was
10
funny.
seconds memorable. And this is what we did. I'll just play the 10-second one, which is
That was
just
just
crazy.
it.
That was it. I think it was 10 seconds long, right?
It's even longer when it stutters. Yeah,
You couldn't even really tell, but yeah, that's.
that made it really interesting.
Okay, so I'm going to try and, I'm pretty sure that number 4 is Claire.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure of that.
the cheerleader.
Yeah. So we are getting ready to release a CD of the score to Heroes, and we have 10 tracks on, and each track is listed as one of the characters. So we went through the first season and compiled our very best cues from each show and made each character's piece one long piece of music. So instead of it being these small little cues of, well, it's not small on Heroes. The average amount of music we have to compose in 2 or 3 days is about 35 minutes.
It's a lot.
And so it's a lot. And most TV shows are, well, half an hour. Sitcoms are no more than maybe 8 minutes.
Wow.
And dramas are no more than 24 minutes. So we're on the upper end of things. So this, I'll play you a little bit of Claire. I hope this is Claire. If it's not Claire, then whoever it is, it's still good. Oh no, this is Hero.
Hero's great too.
This is Hero.
Hero. Do you have Ando? Does Ando get one?
Ando does not,
They're together.
but they're together.
Ando's the bassoon, here's the marimba.
Oh, I like that.
This was the old Japan in the 1600s. We were there. So that's our hand clapping. Yeah. Just made a loop out of it. See that sound right there? That's Ando.
They say hero, hero.
Yeah, he's chasing
about his mother right now?
No, Hero,
That's
this is,
coming up. He's on the subway.
he's on the
like,
subway
thinking,
and he's getting ready to stop time.
he's gonna try it. Yeah, this is
Sorry for the non-heroes watchers in the room. That's what Hero, the character, does when he tries to stop time.
So then it works.
And then he's in New York City, wakes up and he's in New
Gets off
York.
the subway and he's in Times Square. And it's, I did it! And then it goes into
Him stopping. No one's moving in the room.
Oh, yes.
He's walking around the room.
it's frozen.
Is that actually him, his voice?
No, this guy we hired.
Now this is like his mother stuff. This is the old,
Old Japan.
We actually got a koto player to come and play. It's amazing.
Amazing player.
So yeah, how much of this is live instruments and how much is...
Most of it is.
Yeah. So you had a string section, the whole...
No. That is the part we don't have. We have a very expensive library.
Yes.
All right, here's the deal. There's so much, and this is really, really long. There's zillions, and there's so much here, so we're not going to go through this, but all that to say, it's a pretty vibey CD.
You know,
That's cool.
what I wanted to say about scoring, and it took me a long time to learn. I don't know if anybody in here is interested in scoring films or TV, but it was really hard to make the transition from trying to write music all the time to actually scoring something, because it's a different thing. You're not, I was always trying to write, how does the music go, and all these changes, and a melody, and all, and you can kind of tell from that it's all beds. That's really all it needs is just some emotional beds and maybe some. We need a button,
Right.
So, and that's pretty much it.
So it's different than, say, when you think of like classic Maurice Jarre, who just passed away. As a matter of fact, like that classic kind of Lawrence of Arabia score. What
Not
you're doing
that
is
different.
it's not that
It's
different.
not that different.
Well,
it really isn't.
it is different than being a composer. I mean, if
Like
you
a full-on
went
orchestral
to
composer.
a music teacher and you said, I want to be a composer, then you learn one thing. If you say, I want to be a film composer, then you learn something else. Because it just, I think it was Aaron Copeland or something got hired to score a film, and they had a meeting about it, and he asked how much music would it be, and they're like, well, it's probably about an hour. And he went away and disappeared, and they were trying to find him for several months.
He was writing the piece.
And he came back and had written a 60-minute
Oh.
piece. And they were like, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Copeland, that's not the way it's done. And so it's a kind of different thing, yeah.
So talk to me about this expensive library that you have, and how do you utilize it?
Yeah,
Yes.
and that also helps to save us time and money.
You're talking about samples.
We have sample
Yeah.
libraries. We have a massive library with about 6 different computers and with massive amounts of backup. And we are always on the hunt for new libraries, and we're always trying to sample new libraries so that we don't sound like every other composer. We did get lucky enough to be fairly close with Hans Zimmer, who gave us his London Symphony
Very
Orchestra.
generous.
So,
Nice.
which
Nice.
is
Very
a phenomenal
nice.
library. So we
He's-
got lucky with that.
He's amazing.
Yeah, I mean,
Guy.
if you want to have a string date, it'll cost you
About $100 grand a
80
day.
to 100 grand for a day of string recording.
For just a 6-hour session.
Wow.
So,
So you
and
wanna
you don't
have
get
a
that,
good
you don't
string
get that money
library.
when you're composing film.
No.
Yeah, and with a show like Heroes that travels around the world, and you kind of want
right.
to represent those
The
different
flavors of the
countries,
world, yeah.
we get that by having sample libraries, kind of pick the samples, different Indian, instruments or whatever it is. So.
Mhm.
So how about Nurse Jackie, which is another project you were working on?
That's a
That's
great
totally
project.
different. It's a totally different kind of show.
Totally
So-
different, yeah, and it took us a minute to get the style for that show because Heroes was so specific, and Nurse Jackie is more of it's a dramedy, but it's really smart comedy, and they don't want you to hit things, the way that a lot of television shows do.
They want you to-
yeah. They
Very
liked
subtle.
a more band flavor thing, so we're actually playing, and it's actually really a break for us because we go from really computer-based keyboard to Wendy plays the drums on Nurse Jackie, and drums, and guitar, bass, and I play like actual piano and organ, and
Nurse
real
Jackie
meat
is
and
it's a
potatoes
Showtime show that's
instruments.
going to start in June that stars
Edie Falco.
Edie Falco, who was the mama on The Sopranos. She was Carmela.
Right.
And she plays a nurse addicted to painkillers. And it's
Is it contemporary? Set in the
It's
present day?
contemporary. It's fantastic, and no, it's nothing like House. And
Thank
it's
God.
fantastic. So we just finished the season of that. There's 12 episodes, and we just did a great main title to that, which I did bring
Shall we hear
to
it?
show you guys
And
how different it is.
while you're loading that up, I just want to ask you about Crossing Jordan, because I think it's interesting to do it's not exactly a crime procedural, I guess, but it's sort of a crime procedural. That's totally different.
Yeah, it had to move more into procedural as the,
It did.
Yeah, the network.
As the
was
numbers
to-
went down,
Yeah.
we had to go to more into procedural.
Do you have to approach that in a different way, that kind of show?
Yeah, because we started out being really, it was character driven and more personal and like acoustic guitars and, a little more emotional sounding to like,
Right.
clue, let's see, all kinds of medical terminology. And so it became more clinical musically too.
All right, I don't want to. Here we go. I'm just going to play this. This is the title sequence to Nurse Jackie. No, it's not.
Oh, let's play it. Try to
Mm-hmm.
just double click on it.
That's Nurse Jackie.
That's the title of Nurse Jackie. Let's hope everybody gets sick here.
So in general, I wanted to ask about your influences, which are vast and varied. I was reading, Wendy, that you sometimes hang out at Red Cat and check out the avant-garde, bang on a can-ish kind of stuff.
Oh,
And then there's,
no, that's me.
or is that you,
This
Lisa?
one.
Oh, okay. And you're interested in dance music.
Yes.
Both of you like Little Dragon, that Norwegian
Yeah.
band. In the past you've cited like Kid Creole and the Coconuts as an influence. There's just such a wide array. And I wondered, oftentimes musicians have said to me, well, at a certain point I just have to stop listening to other stuff. I have to go inside, and just shut out all that other stuff. Do you ever have that moment?
She does. I don't. Never.
You can just go from listening to something on your headphones to writing something.
With pleasure. With absolute pleasure. I am a food-aholic. I mean, a music-aholic.
Interesting, Dr. Freud.
I have just started doing a radio show. So, I'm
Where are you doing a radio show
Constantly.
for?
on the internet on luxuriamusic.com. It's Girl Brothers Radio, and I am a complete nut for every kind of music. So I am constantly hunting
Pretty great.
and listening. And I sort of bring everything to Lisa, and she's clueless.
I am clueless. Unless it's a bang on a bang. Yeah, you know.
I love that stuff too. Well, I mean, it's interesting because it's like the sound you have is so eclectic and genre defying, so it makes sense that you'll be bringing in all those different influences. So let's go back in time a little bit and talk about when you started, when you really started as kids. You had a band called Waldorf Salad, and I'm just curious what that band sounded like.
Horrible.
You were literally children, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well,
It was- Go ahead.
Well, it happened because at first we weren't horrible. We were kind of cool. We would just jam, or play Frank Zappa songs.
that's pretty cool.
And then Wendy's dad got mad at us because we were he came downstairs. He had his studio downstairs, in their house.
Both of your dads were studio musicians, right?
Yeah. So he had drums, pianos, organs, all kinds of instruments around, and we were down there freaking out, woo! And he came down and he called us a bunch of chimpanzees. What are you guys doing down here banging on my gear? If you're gonna play some music, play some songs or something. So he wrote us these songs, and they were all
They wrote
little
these
Goo
charts.
Goo
I mean,
Gaga
bless his
songs.
heart, we love my dad, but
Look
they
at
were
the
just
children.
horrible. Just as cheeseball as it gets.
It's horrible.
Just terrible.
Is this available on eBay somewhere?
I hope not.
No, I
Don't
really
look for it.
I look right at you. It's horrible, but that all to say,
It was a good
it was a good time.
He brought us into the studio.
Yeah, we got signed to A&M.
Wow.
You know.
It was weird.
Well, having played together since you were children, how intuitive is the collaboration? You've talked a little bit about how the collaboration works, and I was just curious, at what points in any given process do you have to really work, look at each other and be like, okay, it's just not flowing, and do you have any tricks or any things you do, or, arm wrestling?
We usually fight for a minute. We usually have an
Get some
argument.
tension.
And then as soon as the argument's over with, there's this weird, odd, dead space in the room. And once that dead space sort of becomes really uncomfortable, one or the two of us go, let's move on now.
Okay,
Huh.
it's just
So it's
Let me try my idea.
It usually
What are you, my
starts
teacher?
as a miserable pathology, and then ends up being creative. So that's how it works.
Speaking of working with other people, you have worked with many amazing people throughout your career. Just to list a few names, very few though. They're quite famous for their strong personalities. I kind of asked you this on the little email thing we did, but Virtuality Mitchell, Michelle Ndegeocello, Terrence Trent D'Arby, Madonna, Eric Clapton. What is the key to creating a space for yourself in the room when you're working with people with, we're not just talking about big personalities, we're talking about
The biggest.
the biggest person. And then
Like
there's that
the
little
Emperor's
short
not
guy
wearing
who
any
wears
clothes
purple a
kind
lot.
of big.
He has
Yeah,
this
that
kind of
yeah.
personality too. But seriously, how do you make a space for yourself when you are there, as a collaborator, maybe as a studio musician, so they may be directing the vision, but you still have to assert yourself.
Well, for instance, I played guitar on the new Madonna record. I was called in to
And she
play.
name checks you on it, right?
Yeah, she
Don't
does.
she and
She
Pharrell
name checks
shout
me.
you
Yep.
out?
So I was called in to do the track, and I walked in, and there's 5 million people in the room, and here comes Madonna, looking adorable and cute in her little white outfit, and looking very sporty. And I've known her off and on for years now, and there's always been sort of a general respect level that you can kind of psychically get from people, and I think I've been lucky enough to garner her respect, and so that's not to say that she didn't sit next to me the entire time I was in front of the board doing my guitar part, and me having to look at her, and after I'm done with the part, saying,
Is that all right?
how do you feel about that? And I think that that's the key to working with those people with those huge egos, is to kind of facilitate that side of them that really needs to be the top dog. It doesn't cost me anything emotionally to let them be the top dog.
Right.
It just doesn't. So I sort of get a kick out of it. And even with people like Prince, who has to be the top dog, I kind of get a kick out of it because you know what? Go ahead.
And then you can still express yourself creatively.
Yeah, it's like you want
Yeah.
that. You want to do that. You really want to do that. You can go ahead and do that. It's all good. It doesn't cost me anything to sit on the sidelines and watch you do that.
Well, with Prince, though, of course, you were key architects of a sound that you created with him together. And I feel that it's been more acknowledged in recent years, I think. But it's not like you were held up, Wendy and Lisa were held up as like the way Mike Bloomfield was with Dylan, or Randy Rhoads with Ozzy, or Sly and Robbie even. And,
I know, right.
I mean, these many male instrumentalists who are like these heroic figures in these bands. I mean, your role was always portrayed as more mysterious and sort of magical in the band, but not acknowledged, I think, as a serious musical contribution for a long time. And I just wondered about, what that was like, experiencing that at the time, and it has progressed where I feel that you are hopefully acknowledged more musically now, but just how was that
Well,
for you?
as younger, right, when we were doing that, we were so young,
Yeah.
and there was such we used to call it the fishbowl effect, where, you'd put your little goldfish bowl right in the middle of a table, and everybody would walk around and look at the goldfish, and that's kind of what our life was like back then. I think that when we got older and were on our own and we had the support of a lot of fans that were the ones with the vocal mouthpiece saying, this is what this particular thing was then and this is what it is now, why is it so different? It wasn't us saying those things, it was fans saying those things. So with that momentum, I think people are kind of getting to their, it's the 100th monkey syndrome thing.
Right.
I think that's what's happening right now.
Right.
Certainly the two of us aren't like holding a press conference and saying, we did blah, 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 blah,
Right.
So would you think that's, am I on to something here?
Oh, that sounds like a bunch of hooey. But it took up some time.
Well, let me just say in a larger historical context, women instrumentalists are never that acknowledged. And it was interesting
No.
that your image, and I'm fascinated with the Wendy and Lisa image historically. You should go to their website. They posted some awesome videos with the most unbelievable hair. And is that product still available? I need to know. But
Yes, it is.
It's still in here.
and you even have that one album cover or something where your hair merged.
They merged. It became like this sundial of hair. It was fabulous.
But there was one of the videos that you posted on your website, which is also on YouTube, was from this thing where you interviewed each other, and you start, Lisa, by saying, which of us is Wendy and which of us is Lisa? And we had this whole thing together. And, but what's interesting to me about this is, okay, on one level it's like the two hot ladies who are merging and their hair is huge. But on the other level, it's a really interesting expression of women's connection with each other that I think that there's something there. I mean, there is something about women's friendship or love between women that is very often. You do have moments with the women you love. I have with the women that I love the most, where it's like, did you say that or did I say that? And you see each other. You see yourself in each
Let's
other.
go to the bathroom together.
Well, as Wendy and Lisa,
Share
the
hair
band,
product,
as the band, it was hysterical. As Wendy and Lisa, when we left Prince, there was my sister Susanna.
You're a
Lisa's
twin
sister,
also. There you
right,
go.
Cool.
and our drummer Carla, who's now at this really great band Auto Lux, which is a killer band in town. The Us Dames on the Road. It's really not a myth when people say that when women hang, that their cycles merge. It's absolutely true. So it's not, but the thing that was so crazy is that the two guys in the band,
Their
really
cycles
had-
merged also.
They started having periods. They would get bitchy all of a sudden. We'd say, Alan.
Yeah.
Started.
No, but it's true. I mean,
I just am saying, I feel
No,
like women's connection is a subject of your art. It's
It
a
is.
subject of your music.
It is, but you know, when I think about in terms of the two of us as kids, because our sisters
Right.
were like the chicks, the guys were, oh my God, Debbie and Susanna, blah, 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 they're blah, blah, blah. And we were like, didn't rely so much on that
On the baby
antenna
yeah.
that
Yeah.
certain chicks have, so we
Yeah.
kind of had to kind of rely a little bit more on the geekdom of being a musician. So I think that we've never really totally been comfortable with the babedom anyway. So
And yet you were such babes, and you are such babes.
you know, it's funny.
Funny how that happens. When you were working with Prince, I know that you turned him on to the Fairlight. I'm very interested in this particular instrument because I'm interested in Kate Bush, and she was an early
She was one of the
Fairlight
first
user.
too.
And I was just curious about that. That it's those early synths,
Right.
and what made them special, like what world they opened up.
Oh, God. They're just so different.
Yeah. No one had a flute sample.
It was, yeah.
You know, I mean, the big sample back then was the big Shakahoochie flute.
Right.
Right? You heard that in every Peter Gabriel record, every Kate Bush record. And then we got our hands on it. We were like, yeah, girls and boys food. Yeah, that's so cool. So we were like, I just thought, oh, Jesus, now we're cool. So, I mean, there was that, and then there was a couple, other little samples that everybody used, but no one had that. No one had that technology, but at the same time, there was an instrument called the Chamberlain, and there was a Mellotron that used tapes to kind of recreate sounds, and you hear a lot of that on the Beatles
the
records,
Beatles,
and they
yeah.
had, like Sgt.
Again,
Peppers,
with the
and
flutes.
with the flutes and the and but something happened with the technology of a Fairlight because you had, like the old. You had
there was the
little
monitor,
monitor
and
and a
light
little
pen.
pen,
That
and there was like the
coolest.
black and green writing, and like, ooh, there's the Shakahoochie tap. So it was, that whole thing was completely different. We were all used to having Oberheims where it was like a knob and it goes, and that's basically all you could do. Or you could take the mod wheel and go, wee, and you thought, oh, I'm so cutting edge. But then everybody was cutting edge and it just sounded like crap. And so Lisa and I got our hands on a Fairlight through one of the guys that were working with Peter Gabriel, and we were like, okay, we got to bring this to Prince because this is going to change things. And then with that, we ended up doing Around the World in a Day and the Parade record, and those were like really experimental sound records for him, which transferred into the Sign of the Times record. But those two records were really pivotal in exploring all those new instruments and bringing that to him, right?
Yeah.
So how has it changed since, for you, okay, so we've gone a long way from the Fairlight now, and like sort of post-hip-hop and samples becoming so much a part of music in general, like how did that change your compositional style to all, that it became such the kind of lingua franca of pop?
I don't know. I think it's just having more colors in the crayon box, and
That's like being a DJ now is considered being a rock star. I mean, there is a particular art to being able to mix records and to get up on stage and take the temperature of a room with people at 9 o'clock at night getting ready to dance to people at 3 a.m. wanting to dance. You have to have a skill at trying to read the room, and it's very similar to being an artist on stage.
Right.
So having a board in front of you is really no different than playing a guitar solo.
So let's talk about producers, because I know you are producers. You've also worked with some amazing producers. Some of my favorite producers, Chad Blake, you worked with. Maybe you could just talk about that. We're working with him on the Girl Brothers record, and I don't know how many of you have heard this record, but it's really amazing. Maybe you could just talk about that project a little and what it was and why it happened. And
Girl Brothers record? That was a difficult time. Wendy's brother had passed away, and it kind of took us out of commission for a little while, and we actually started playing with Wendy's brother-in-law Doyle just doing, working on his records. We produced his first album, and then we did some touring with him. And we couldn't really write for a while. It was too emotional because of losing Jonathan. Nothing like that had ever happened to us before. And so when we finally did start writing, all the songs that were coming out were about Jonathan. So we had actually recorded most of the record at home. We had a home studio. We had a 1-inch 24-track Tascam machine.
Guerrilla recording.
Wow. Nobody has those. It's ridiculous. But and were we scoring? What were we
No,
scoring?
we hadn't done anything really yet. But what we did, I think we had just done this whole odyssey working with the producer Trevor Horn, who was one of my idols when I was a young kid. When I heard "Slave to the Rhythm," I was like, "That's what I want to be."
Yeah.
And so we ended up co-producing and writing songs on Seal's second record, and working with Trevor.
I have a Seal question too.
Right, and then we decided to do a record with Trevor. We thought, okay, we're going to make our "Slave to the Rhythm," and it ended up being an absolute disaster working with him.
Really?
It was just a nightmare. I wish I could gossip to every one of you here about it. It would just be so cathartic for me that I didn't sound like an asshole. So it didn't work out. So we ended up taking time away from the music business because of that moment. It was a very very difficult time because of that, and then the death of my brother. So that just worked against our creative juices, and we were just like, can't do it. So we waited for a while, and then it came, and then when we were done with whatever we had, the two of us were like,
What do we do with this?
what are we going to do?
Because it's so different.
Who
I mean,
can
it's
we
like
get?
a total about face from
It
the Wendy
was.
and Lisa.
And
in the
it was
past.
in response to working with Trevor Horn,
Interesting.
which was, when you record a song with Trevor Horn, you do 12 versions of one song, and then you chuck it all into the computer, and you sew it together and try and come up with this thing.
So it's totally not organic. in any
No,
way.
and we were the 12 versions, so it became
Yeah, usually
very
Trevor
difficult.
would call different groups of musicians in and try this band and that band and this key and this tempo. And
But you were having to do it all.
Well, we were doing it all ourselves, and then he was hardly even there.
All right, careful. We won't go there.
Sometimes.
So it was different with Chad Blake.
It was
And
complete
Chad was-
antithesis. It was like,
He was
don't
a
do it more than
fantasy
once.
Huh.
Oh my God, yeah.
And we'd be
First
like,
take,
oh, that
best
was
take.
horrible. And he was like, no, that was it.
Wow.
Done, moving on.
Wow.
Next, like, well, please, I'm really out of tune. It sounds
I
terrible.
said, no.
No, it's keeping it.
You know, I wondered if you listened to Lisa Germano's records much, because this
Yeah.
sort of
I
connects
listen to
me
them
that
and
way.
I play on them.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know you played. She's wow, because the Girl Brothers connects to me with what Lisa's doing in her
And
music.
she was in our band for a little while.
She's a genius.
She's an American
she's-
genius.
Yeah, okay.
Truly.
Yeah.
You have also worked with Craig Street on various projects, not your
Ah,
own, but
yes.
he's one of my very favorite producers.
Yeah.
And so I bring up these producers to ask you, as you are also producers yourselves, and what is the producer's role to you? Can it be defined, or is it? Because I've talked to other musicians and producers where they've said, well, it's this and that and that and this, and some are this and some are that, and I mean, what is the essence of being a producer?
Yeah,
depends.
well, that's true. Some are this and some are that.
Some are engineers, some just
Yeah.
bring the drinks.
Some are just better for
Yeah.
bands, and some are just better for a singer.
Huh.
It just, I mean, you
Yeah.
can't call in the dudes who produce Mariah Carey and expect them to be able to produce a Pearl Jam record. That's a band.
Although
You
funny you should mention Pearl Jam.
I know.
Because you've worked with them.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings up the eclecticism of your credits, which are kind of amazing. From The Orb to Pearl Jam to apparently Lisa Germano to Seal to so many people. Has there ever been a proposed collaboration where you've gone, that I just can't? Can you tell us what it was? Can you?
T.I.
Are you serious? Really? Was it before or after the jail sentence?
It was before, and it was before he was really even known. My father called me on the phone, and he said, there's this guy named T.I. Payne. So, is that right?
Well, there's T-Pain and then there's T.I.
No, T.I.
T.I., the rapper.
T.I., yeah. And he was like, this dude wants you to come and and the two of you play on his record and wants to do a thing with the two of you. And I was like, what? And I listened to his stuff and I was like, oh my God, you couldn't pay me to do that. So, I mean, whatever. I mean, I might be the fool. You might be a fool. But that was one thing where I was like, oh, that's just not going to work.
Just couldn't see the connection.
I just couldn't get my head around it.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't play my stuff with, I can't. I
Wow.
don't know how to do it. So that was one thing, yeah.
Huh. Interesting. And what is the strangest thing that's ever happened to you in the studio beyond playing a trombone on a Michael Penn record, which apparently you did?
I think it was Grace Jones wanting to sleep with the two of us.
Oh yeah, let's. I want to open up the room to questions. But before that, just do tell
That's
us.
pretty weird.
Just tell them.
Fantastic, though, really.
That's like the strangest thing.
I don't consider that
We were
strange
both-
at all. But
So scared.
before we open up the room to questions, tell them about Grace Jones and the makeup in the car.
You tell them.
No, you tell them. You tell the
You
story.
tell them. You're so like about it.
So we were writing this track for the new record called William's Blood.
Which is
a
amazing
phenomenal.
track.
It's on the new record
Yeah.
Hurricane, right? So we were like, Grace Jones. Yeah! Let's work with her. Yes, Slave to the Rhythm. Yes, Sly and Robbie. Yes, all that.
Grace Jones.
So we get like this phone call. Okay, she's staying with her boyfriend in West Hollywood. Here's the address. You got to go pick her up. You know, she's one of these huge people that you have to forget about your hugeness and embrace the hugeness of her, which is not a problem. So the two of us went to go pick her up. In the morning to her was, I think, 5:30 in the afternoon. That's the morning. And we picked her up. We brought her to the house, and
Well, we had to stop at the liquor store.
we had to stop at the liquor store.
Buy bottles of champagne.
Bottles of Cristal, which we didn't touch.
Yeah, I think I already quit drinking.
Yeah. So we go to the house, and mind you, Grace comes out, and she's covered in this fabulous black, like almost like the
Burqa.
what's the, like Grim Reaper kind of cape thing. And she just, and she's fabulous. It's all wrapped, and so we get to the house, and she takes it all off, and she's got this beautiful short afro, not a stitch of makeup. She's wearing a black T-shirt, and she's wearing
wearing,
a
like,
pair of
sweatpants
black
or something.
sweatpants, and she throws her heels off, so she's got bare feet, and she's the foxiest,
And
most
how old is she, like 60
beautiful.
or so now?
Yeah, but at the time she was.
No one knows.
Yeah, it's one of those things.
At the
Just
time, she was immortal.
they say black don't crack, so she is one beautiful, gorgeous creature. So we go upstairs into the studio and we start this track, and there's a lot of hoopla, and we get her to play a little bit of bass, and she's adorable sitting there playing bass. She's quite little, playing a little bass. The evening's going on, she's getting more, feeling kind of good, and we're all feeling kind of good. And I hope to God when this comes back, Grace isn't.
Wendy, how could you?
Oh, we've gotten many of those calls from many people. Don't talk about me. So she was like, you have to take me to this party tonight. Will you drive me to blah, 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 blah. And I said, sure. So she's like, there's no makeup. We get her in the car, and she gets the thing back on and the heels, and she yanks up her sweats so they're like up by her thighs. You can't tell. She looks like she's got nothing underneath it. And she proceeds to take out this black Coal pencil that looks like it's been used for 100 years. It's about that big. And she's sitting in the back seat of my car, and I'm driving through like the hills, and there's zibbery,
Yeah, it's like
and she
whatever,
does her
10:30
face
and-
with a black Coal pencil. Her mouth, her cheeks, the eyes, the entire thing, and looks like Grace Jones. And we get to this restaurant, open the door, she whips off the hood, steps out of the car just like showbiz,
Wrapped it around.
with the high heel,
Looks like-
with the perfect face, and she was off.
And that
I
is
mean,
right.
you could hear like applause.
You could. Ladies and gentlemen,
from the heavens.
Grace Jones. And I couldn't believe it. I
You're
couldn't
like-
believe it. I was just,
We didn't
exactly.
cool off for like several minutes.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, if you put a black hole pencil on me, and I was going to look a little bit like Marilyn Manson.
Yeah,
But her
it's
skin is so
amazing.
beautifully dark and rich and chocolatey. Black is just shadow. So it ended up being this.
She did the whole thing with a black pencil
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it.
in the back seat in the dark.
In the back seat in the dark. No mirror. Nothing.
So I want to open up the room to questions. Would anyone like to ask a question? It's a great opportunity. Janice?
Any live performances coming up?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. That was my question that I was going to ask. So
She's a plant.
I actually do know her. And
We
she's
are going to
amazing.
try and do that this summer once the season of film and TV ends. We're going to try and.
Can
get
you
it
tell
out.
us about Edith Funker?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know what we're gonna do, but we have a band with a bunch of other really cool people. Erica Badu, Questlove, James Poyser, keyboard player, Doyle Bramhall, again, guitar, amazing. Susanna. Who else am I forgetting?
Mike Elizondo.
Oh, Mike
Mike
Elizondo, incredible bass player, producer. And we did some projects together. We really want to do a tour in the summer together and do Wendy and Lisa, Doyle, Erica.
We want it to be a
Edith
co-op.
Funker.
So
I love
we're
it.
each other's band and we all do.
Band.
That's such a great idea.
So that's just in the works. We're not sure. Other than that, presently we're doing a record store day. We're not playing. We're just going to be at record store day on April 18th, and then on the 19th there's an autism benefit at the Avalon.
And we're playing
And
live there.
we're actually playing at that one.
With the
And
band?
then-
Yeah, with the band.
With Mike Elizondo. And anyway, so, I don't know, check our website, we'll just post it. As the TV season starts winding down right now, by the end of April, early May, we'll be jobless. So we're gonna try to book some gigs.
Other questions? Yes?
When you're writing, whether it's pop songwriting or composing, do you ever run into patches that are just kind of void?
Dead?
Yeah, and you go through these periods where you're trying to extract it out of your brain. Do you kind of go into a routine like to draw yourself out of it, or how do you move on from this like static patch?
It's a great question.
There are a few tricks. Mostly you have to be sort of. There's a book by a great writer by the name of Anne Lamott, and she wrote a book called Bird by Bird. And one of the tricks that her father told her, which she still does, which I try and do now as a writer for music, she said, get an empty frame and put that frame anywhere that you want, whether it be, I don't know, on your face, okay? And if you don't know what to write, put that frame against your face, and I can't write about anything outside that frame. I can look at you and I have to create a story based around your hat and why you'd wear that hat and where that hat came from. Did it come from a past lover gave that to your hat and you only wear it on Friday nights? That's what you have to do. So you stay in that frame. That's a way to get yourself out of that broken place. It's a way to do it. And I think that's a great way to do it. I also think to read something that's better than your abilities is, for me personally, a way to jumpstart my creative process. I'm inspired by people that are much better than me, more capable. Sometimes that might make people feel worse, like I'm a loser. If I listen to Joni Mitchell, I'll never be able to write a song.
Yeah.
If I read Tolstoy, I won't be able to. But for me, it gives me
But it's also
a push.
important, having said that, to not be afraid to suck, to just be really bad and do something stupid. And a lot of times it helps me open up my flow if I just start going, oh, the Cocoa Puffs are really tasty, and and just whatever goes in my brain, and it literally makes me start laughing and and it jumpstarts my brain. I mean, a lot of times in the studio, I become really obnoxious because, and it might be nervous energy, but I had to break that self-consciousness, and especially working in a small room with a couple of people who are like, okay, we're waiting, you know, and it's like, okay, ooh, you know. So I just start being goofy and not you know, don't be afraid to be really bad or write like a 30-second song.
Don't be afraid to fail. Laurence Olivier said that is about being an actor. Don't be afraid to fail.
Yeah, and there's also that if you're not making mistakes, you're not trying hard enough. You're being safe. So,
Question?
Was there an agent or manager needed that enabled you to do your first score, or did you just?
We got really lucky. We were doing a record with Trevor Horn at the time, and we were friends with Kathy Nelson, who's the music executive over at Universal, and she called Trevor and said, do the girls have a song for this film that I'm working on called Dangerous Minds? And he said, well, yeah, let's give you a song. So when that started, they at the time had an amazing composer by the name of Mark Isham doing this film. And the producers of that film were Jerry Bruckheimer and Don Simpson. And Mark had already been on version 2 of his score. And the producers asked Mark if he would be amenable to working with Lisa and I on it. And the two of us were like, first of all, he's going to hate us if we do
how
this.
annoying.
And secondly, why would he want to do that? Well, he did. And he was gracious and amazing. And he said, just take it. It's yours.
Wow.
And we sat with Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer and pitched to them what our idea was and finished the score, and that was our in. We did not have an agent at the time. We just got very lucky.
Yeah, it's rare.
Yes?
So you guys talked about the pressure that you had from the label to maintain similar sounds to what we did with Prince when we first left. But what about image-wise? Prince obviously had a lot of sexuality coming from his shows and his image. So were you forced to, or pressured by the labels to maintain that image or exude a lot of that? I mean,
All the
your
time.
early videos.
All the time. And we were in, I
Big
think we were in
time.
Amsterdam once, and we were doing a press tour at one point. And we went to this little tiny place to go get some pictures taken, and the guy had 2 Harley Davidsons and some fur coats. I don't know about you.
Well, that's not sexy to me. They literally like would come to our video shoots and like look at what we were wearing, and like we'd wear jeans or something, and this one marketing guy just had a fit, was like,
Oh, they're not going to have a boner for
we have to
that.
have a meeting. And it's like, that doesn't give you a boner. I mean, they were really crude. It was horrible. And it was constant pressure.
Yeah, constant.
And
So
they
I think that
didn't-
was one of the reasons why we never got to stay on a major label. I think that was one of the reasons why we were let go a lot, because the people that saw us kind of wanted to categorize us as Prince's
Harem.
harem,
Members.
and
Yeah.
we just really never were that. And I mean,
Right.
so it became very difficult, and they just never knew where to put us, even in a bin. I mean, record stores don't really exist now, but when you walk into the old Virgin or the old Tower, there'd be a Wendy and Lisa record in an R&B section, and then there'd be one in a pop, and then there'd be one in rock and roll, and be like,
Yeah,
Who,
what
what
is
the
it?
hell are these
It's all
two?
over
What's
the
going on?
place.
So we could never get the business of music to work with Wendy and Lisa as musicians, and it was a nightmare. And now, with the advent of computers and releasing and doing all by yourself, we have our 2 queens in the back that are responsible for every move we make, and they're our guerrilla warfare now. So it's only through the internet, and we press and, I don't, but the girls press and stuff and send and do it all themselves. And as far as image goes, I could care less now.
So, but talk a little bit about that the new release, and like how much. I saw Amanda Palmer was talking at South by Southwest from the Dresden Dolls, and she was talking about how for her independent release, she's like Twittering all the time and blogging. She answers every email.
We
You
do the
guys
same.
Twitter
All the time.
Do you think there's a musical application for Twitter? Do you think one day there will be Twitter music somehow?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's already, like, you can do this thing called 12-second videos.
12-second
videos.
videos.
Oh, right. You
So
guys are
we
doing
do that
right?
too, so we've got us playing theremins and vlogging and doing all that kind of stuff. Yes, so, there'll be application, there's a lot of people that use it just to kind of like, listen to my new record, blah, 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 which is all good, I'm good with that, but this is our way of staying connected to our fans now, and our fans are the ones that are doing it all.
Right.
So we're making it available to them, we're asking them for help, they're giving us their ideas, and
I know
that's
Jill,
the new way to
Jill
do it.
Sobio, who you've been working with,
Jill,
a little, she
same
does
thing.
a similar thing,
She
right?
does the
She's
same
even,
thing.
like patronage, right? Isn't she having
She
the fans
had
pay
her
for the
record financed through her
Yeah,
That's
fans.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's the new way to do things. And artists like that and artists like us, we don't have a choice. There's no way we can compete with those large budgets and all
It
that.
just doesn't make sense
No.
for us. And actually, we're happier people now
Right.
doing it this way. It's much better.
Mhm.
Other questions in the room? Yes?
I had a two-pronged question, going back to the first album. Leaving Prince, who signed you to Columbia, and what was the original, I mean, they signed you, they wanted something, but the album was so wonderfully eclectic, but did they originally sign you to do R&B, or did they just sign you to do Wendy and Lisa, or did they sign you pop? What was the initial direction for that record?
I don't think
It
they.
wasn't defined.
Yeah, they just assumed, I think, that we were coming from Prince, that it was going to be a Prince record. And there was a big, high profile, there was a bidding war. It was a feeding frenzy. It was kind of disgusting in a way. It was really exciting, but it was maybe one of the worst things that could happen to an artist. Also because if they give you we'll pay $2 million, we'll pay $5 million, they didn't, I can't remember what it was, but it was, everybody bidding higher and higher and higher, and the bigger advance that you get,
The less money you
the
make.
more you're in debt to them to pay
You
that
don't make
money
anything.
back. And if you want to make an artsy record or an introspective study on
That ain't gonna happen.
one string guitar, it's just like they're gonna be like, what?
They're gonna be like,
So they were down at the studio listening to things all the time, and I don't know if we like it. What are we gonna do with this? And what's this song about? And we managed to fight our way through it. They did think we had a certain charm or something, and then it was like, well, we'll have to package it this way, and are you gonna wear this? And it just became a nightmare. Yeah.
And I'm sorry, and then the second part of my question has to do with now, when I imagine that film companies or television companies come to you, what do they tend to want from you? Like when they think of Wendy and Lisa, to score this, to score that?
And what does Wendy and Lisa mean, kind
Yeah,
of?
what does it mean to
No.
that world?
yeah, it's a good question
I know,
because it's
I wonder that
changed.
sometimes.
We've been scoring now for probably about 15 years now, and so when we first started, we got every black urban movie ever made. And it was all about beatbox, and it was all about and you're from Prince, you got to be blah, 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 blah. And we were like, holy mackerel. And then we got to a point where it was like, oh my God, we're going to get pigeonholed, in which that happens with composers all the time. Like, oh, this composer only gets called to do the comedy, and this composer only gets called to do the big drama sequences, and da-da-da. And Lisa and I want to be serious film composers and want to do serious scores. So we stopped and asked our agents, which we had gone through a few different agents, to stop accepting and pitching for those films. Not because I didn't want to, but because I wanted to, but I didn't want it to be the only thing that the two of us could do. So we went through a little dry spell where, you'd get, 50 Cent's new movie coming out, he'll pay you $5 million to do, and we're like, I just can't go there. So we got lucky and ended up having this relationship with a man by the name of Alan Arkish, who's this crazy producer, director who did Rock and Roll High School and went on to do all this TV stuff. And he called me and Lisa while we were working with Neil Finn in New Zealand and said, I'm doing this really weird show with David Kelly called Snoops. Oh, And he said, and I want you guys to do the music for it. I think it would be really cool if you guys did it. And we were like, oh God, horrible. And they sent us the pilot, and the two of us saw it in New Zealand, and we were like, but we thought it was a very calculated move on our part.
He was the hottest thing on TV at that time.
Yeah, it was the
right?
hottest thing on
Yeah.
TV that time, and it was breaking away from the urban school of filmmaking, and we were like, we have to take it. We have to do this in order to break out from that particular scene. So we took it. The season didn't, it lasted, I think 8 episodes, and it was pulled and yanked, luckily. And
But our
then-
relationship with Alan was the most significant thing to come out of that,
Mhm.
because of who he is and what he went on to do. We just clicked as people, and
became his composers, basically.
yeah, every gig that he got, he hired us on as well. And
that stewardess, where did they take you? Was that him too?
no,
that was another friend of ours. That was different.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was different.
all an all-woman kind of thing. Speaking of women, some women friends of ours, comedians, wrote a pilot and got it sold. But Alan is an interesting guy, and he hired us.
He introduced you to Tim Crane also.
He
Yeah.
introduced us to Tim, and we all.
And he was
did
known for
Russian Bird.
hiring, he always gets
The diverse. What is the award?
yeah,
Something
some
for
award,
the most.
the Directors Guild Award gives for diversification. He
Yeah.
hires, strange
Black, white, Puerto
women
Rican,
and
everybody
black
just
people.
freaking.
It's just like, hey, he's a good guy, here's an award. So we happen to fall into the weird people category, thankfully, and it saved our lives.
So before we wrap up, I wonder if you just, there's a lot of people in this room who are probably not at the level you are in their careers yet. So I wondered if we could ask for some, just a bit of advice, or encouragement for young.
For just as an artist or
artists,
composers
or to that thing I mentioned in the beginning, if you want to live a life where you can make music and be creative and still make a living at this time, what do you think is the key? Or what are the keys?
Well, you have to, ego is a very important part of life, but it's not necessarily, I don't know, vanity isn't the same thing as ego and confidence and knowing yourself. And I think you have to know when to be vain and when to be confident. And in us working with so many famous people and being able to make that work, it's because we can be supportive and we can facilitate what they want, and then we let our talent do the talking. So don't sacrifice your talent. Know your talent, work on your talent, spend hours and hours with your instrument, whatever your instrument is. And but also know that you'll survive. Sometimes you got to do the gig that's like, ew, really? But you can do it, and you actually feel kind of good afterwards. And
I'm gonna add to that, because I think we are sort of in a different. I don't know if I would have the same advice to anybody if I didn't have a partner that I was doing this with. I don't know if I'd have the same self-esteem. I don't know whether or not I'd have the endurance, the stomach for it. I can think of many situations where I would have given up much sooner if I hadn't had the sounding board and the collaborative experience of working with a partner. So if you're talking about, what would my advice be? I would try and work with somebody that you care about and that you really respect. For me, it's been like a great thing for me. Again, I just don't know whether or not I would have had the stomach on my own. And that's just the truth. She's got a big enough ego to know she can do it by herself.
Well, we're grateful.
That's my
It's
first
true.
word out of my mouth.
She's like,
ego.
But I thought it was. We're grateful that you found each other and that you've given us so much over the years, and I personally am grateful I moved to LA because I moved to LA, I got to meet Wendy and Lisa.
Oh.
And we're grateful to Josh and Scott for having us, and thanks so
Yeah,
much for
thank
coming.
you.
And
Thanks,
let's-
guys.